Who is the MVP of the Chicago Bears halfway through the season? The most improved player, the offensive player of the year. Let's get to all of that and preview the Giants game right now on Locked On Bears.
You are Locked On Bears, your daily Chicago Bears podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome into Locked On Bears. I'm Joe George, filling in for Lauren Cox over the next couple days. He'll return on Wednesday, but thanks for hanging out with me today as we get ready for the Chicago Bears to take on the New York Giants. You can catch me on the Bears Squad Show every Tuesday night and Sunday for our post-game shows. You can find me on all social media platforms at Joe George Radio. Today's episode is brought to you by Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off your first purchase. And thank you for making Locked On Bears your first listen every day, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. On today's show, we will discuss let's do some midseason awards for the Bears. We'll do most improved player, offensive player of the year, MVP, get to a bunch of them. We'll make some up as well. We'll get to the offense looking like it's going to be fully healthy for the first time in a couple weeks with Luther Burden and Cole Kmet all being cleared, plus DeAndre Swift for this upcoming game, or at least being full participants in practice. We'll talk about the praise that Caleb Williams receives from his head coach, Ben Johnson. And then Rome Odunze quiets the noise around his dad's social media channel. We'll hit all of that on today's show. But I was thinking, we're halfway through the season. Who do we need to recognize the most? Who are the players that deserve these awards as we are halfway through the season? We'll get to the Giants game as well, because of course we expect the Bears to get the W there. But we'll start with the MVP of the 2025 season so far. I did a lot of thinking about this, of which player deserves. Is it Caleb Williams? Is there someone on the defense, someone else on the offense? And ultimately, even though I know in the real award system, I cannot stop thinking about where the Bears are today at 5-3 and say, who is the MVP of this season? It's Ben Johnson. Just, again, rewatching the game last week versus the Bengals and then getting ready for this Giants game, the creativity that we're seeing from him on offense on a daily basis is really remarkable. And it's not just the trick plays. It's the little things. The way we've seen the run game improve so dramatically this season. And honestly, the offensive line's been a part of that. And I considered, honestly, making the offensive linemen part of this consideration here, because they are blocking very well for Caleb Williams. And Caleb's doing a great job not getting sacked. But I just couldn't ignore Ben Johnson and say that he has to be, for me, the MVP of the Chicago Bears season. That was the hardest one for me to choose. The rest of these are pretty easy. The next one I want to go through here, and you guys can let me know in the YouTube comments right below, and let me know on Twitter or TikTok or Instagram, whatever, about who you think, where I got it wrong and where you agree with me at least. But the next award I wanted to give out at the halfway point here for the Bears and is the most improved player on the team. Now, we're going to cheat on some of these because, well, this was my idea. So we're going to kind of make up the rules on the fly. So we're going to give out two of these, one on offense and one on defense. The easy one here, it's Caleb Williams. There's still a lot of room to improve, and we'll discuss him later in the show and the praise he got from his coach and the criticism that he gave from himself. But again, watching what we're seeing the last 2 weeks, I think we've seen much better quarterback play the last 2 weeks, and we've seen just the growth steadily happening. And what I love the most about that, and what I expect to see this weekend in the Giants game, is just another step. That, to me, is the next box to check for Caleb Williams, is 2 games back-to-back, the level of performance that he had versus the Bengals, the level of performance he had versus the Cowboys. So that's number one for me. The other guy, and this might be a personal bias, I joined Locked On Sports last year doing Bears post-game shows, and my first one was the Fail Mary. And I was not a fan of Tyreek Stevenson, not that many of us were. And watching him this season, while this last game wasn't his best because returning, from an injury, wasn't playing all the snaps out there, got beat a couple times, but Tyreek Stevenson was the other one to me that was a shoo-in for this. When I thought about most improved players on the Chicago Bears, and really he was the first name that I wrote down, but I just couldn't ignore what Caleb has accomplished this season. So I throw Tyreek Stevenson up there for me as the next player, as the most improved player on the Bears. The next award I got here for you guys, Offensive Player of the Year at the midway point for the Bears. This one, I got to give it to DeAndre Swift. I feel like your top 2 contenders at this point in the season are DeAndre Swift and Rome Odunze. Now, feel like they're going in two different trajectories here a little bit, right? Rome Odunze was catching touchdowns every single week at the beginning of the season, while DeAndre Swift started pretty slow. Lauren and I have talked about this a lot on the squad shows about how early on he wasn't really attacking the hole that was in front of him and really trying to do the East and West thing that we saw him doing last year. But even though last week he was injured, the previous weeks, really more north and south, more decisive with his running. And I've been really impressed with what we've seen from DeAndre Swift. And honestly, we'll talk about the team getting fully healthy again in the next segment of the show. But I cannot wait to see what Ben Johnson is going to dial up against the Giants and going forward with this potential two-headed monster for the Bears, with both Kyle Monangai and DeAndre Swift. Just how he's going to use them. And it really feels like all of a sudden the Bears, even though as much as Caleb is growing, as I mentioned, that this team is really becoming a run-first team, which isn't shocking because that's very similar in a lot of the ways to the way the Lions did it, with Jamal Williams and DeAndre Swift and Ben Johnson's first year, and then, of course, David Montgomery and Jahmyr Gibbs. So it's easy for me there as well for Offensive Player of the Year for DeAndre Swift. The next one we'll get to here is our Defensive Player of the Year. Now, Montez Sweat in the last 3 games has made a big push for this. But this one, because of the turnovers and just the overall, honestly could have thrown this guy in for the most improved player. I just felt weird handing it to or wanting to nominate myself a veteran for it. But Defensive Player of the Year this year is Kevin Byard. Really have enjoyed what we've seen from him, forcing the turnovers, attacking the football both on the air and the ground. And his post-game comments after this last game were kind of refreshing in a way, to acknowledge that his body language wasn't the best during that game. I appreciate that level of accountability, but Byard has been such a better player in 2025 for the Bears than 2024. Last year, I thought it was one of the worst signings that Ryan Poles might have ever made, honestly. And he's got some doozies of moves and not just signings, obviously, but Byard has rebounded in a big way. And I think he really has been the best player on the defense by quite a big margin right now. And that helps as, Kyler Gordon and Jalen Johnson have been out this year. And, we haven't seen the big moments fully on from Jaquan Brisker. The other nomination here probably would have been Tremaine Edmonds. He's had a great year as well, but I feel like he's been a little more up and down. There's been games where you go, still not, playing at the level of the contract you would have liked him to more early on in the season, but obviously been a turnover machine for the Bears as well. And this is where I'm going to make up some awards. Really, I'm just going to make up one award. And it's because I just want to talk about this guy for a couple minutes before we start talking about the Giants game coming up this weekend, because it will matter. I created this award. I'm calling it the Unsung Hero Award for the Bears halfway through the season, because we don't talk a lot about offensive linemen, but I cannot stop watching these clips that people keep putting up on Twitter and looking at the All-22 film and watching what Darnell Wright is doing day in and day out for the Chicago Bears. We all knew there was a good player in there, but what we've seen from him so far this season is a jump that I didn't know if I was really expecting. But he is just moving bodies at such a relentless rate right now on the offensive line. And it feels like that success that DeAndre Swift and Kyle Monangai, it kind of starts with him. And the new offensive linemen have done a good job too, run blocking. But Darnell Wright, man, it's just been a total monster for the Bears offensive line in 2025. And he's got a big test this weekend. Both tackles do, honestly. The Giants, the sack numbers are not there as much. We discussed this on the Locked On Crossover podcast that you should go check out. We dropped it on Thursday, myself and Patricia from Locked On Giants, that the Giants, because their run game has been so atrocious, you're not seeing the big flashy numbers. But as Ben Johnson said this week, like, this might be the best defensive, line they've faced this entire season, and they've faced some good ones. But you've got 3 or 4 guys for the Giants that can get after the quarterback, can't really stop the run, but Darnell Wright and Benedict are going to be tested in a major, major way this coming weekend. So those are my midseason awards. You can let me know again here in the YouTube comments where you thought I went wrong, if I missed any awards that you would want to hand out yourself as well. You can let me know again in the YouTube comments or on Twitter at Joe George Radio. All right, we'll take our first break here. When we get back, let's talk about the offense getting pretty much fully healthy. The injury report was very encouraging on Thursday, going into the weekend. A lot of full participants from your weapons on offense, just what that's going to look like. Reincorporating Luther Burden, Cole Kmet, Kyle Monangai, and Swift. We'll get to all of that and get you ready for the Giants game next here on Locked On Bears. Today's show is brought to you by Mint Mobile. If you're still overpaying for wireless, it's time to say yes to saying no. At Mint Mobile, their favorite word is no contracts, no monthly bills, no overages, no hidden fees, no BS. I said yes to making the switch and getting premium wireless for just $15 a month. Mint makes it simple. All plans come with high-speed data and unlimited talk and text delivered on the nation's largest 5G network. You can even bring your own phone and keep your same number and contacts. Look, that's a huge win there, because I've had to change my number before and it's an absolutely awful experience. Ready to say yes to saying no? Make the switch at mintmobile.com/lockedonnfl. That's mintmobile.com/lockedonnfl. Upfront payments of $45 required, equivalent to $15 a month. Limited time new customer offers for first 3 months only. Speeds may slow above 35 gigabytes on unlimited plan. Taxes and fees extra. See Mint Mobile for details. Today's show is also brought to you by Gametime. NFL season is back, and honestly, there's nothing better than being in the stadium, surrounded by fans, cheering on your team. But let's be honest, getting tickets can be a hassle between queues, login screens, prices jumping at checkout. It's frustrating. That's why I use Gametime, the app that gives you the advantage back to fans. Gametime is fast, easy, and backed by the Gametime guarantee. You always get 100% authentic tickets delivered on time at the best price, plus all fees are included, so the price you see is the price you pay. I pulled up Gametime in just a couple of taps. I saw amazing deals. I'm talking about your favorite NFL games for as low as $100. I also love the seat view that's out there. I mean, I was thinking about going to Cubs games and those big cement posts that can be in the way, and you can make sure you avoid those if you're going to a game or you're recommending friends to go to Wrigley Field. It's always my favorite thing with Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, that's promo code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off. Swipe, tap, ticket. Go download the Gametime app today. All right, so the injury report came out for the Bears on Thursday, and I was surprised with some of the things we saw. Now, Luther Burden, not so much, being a full participant in practice, taking the week off for the concussion. Concussions are weird because Luther Burden didn't play last week, but Cole Kmet was a full participant in practice on Thursday, as was DeAndre Swift. So you look at your offensive weapons, limited participation for Rome Odunze. That's not shocking because of his heel. He's going to play this weekend, but you're going to have DJ Moore, Rome Odunze, Zacchaeus. You're going to have Luther Burden back. You have both your tight ends and both your running backs. And that's really exciting, I think, for this game coming up this weekend, because as we discussed on the Locked On Crossover show, the New York Giants are terrible at stopping the run. They're one of the worst teams in the NFL. And frankly, I think the Bears should be able to have quite a bit of success this weekend against the Giants, and really in pretty similar fashion to the way that they did against the Cincinnati Bengals. It's a team that doesn't stop the run very well. And I'm very curious that after Monangai's performance, if that changes the mindset of Ben Johnson in this game. I know we discussed this a little bit on Wednesday, but I really feel like in terms of, I don't want to look at this as carries, because both Swift and Monangai have proven that they can catch the ball to the backfield. Obviously Swift, but Monangai's been really good in the screen game. He does a good job pass blocking. So, going back to Ben Johnson's first press conference when he said no block, no rock. It's Kyle Monangai, no problem for him. He can achieve that, obviously, as can DeAndre Swift. But, after that breakout performance of rushing for 176 yards, I think the fans and all of us want to see a lot more Kyle Monangai. But DeAndre Swift has also been incredible. Again, I just, in that first segment, gave him the Bears Offensive Player of the Year, and I think it's very well deserved. So, for me, when I look at the touches this weekend and how I want to see it split, the more I've thought about it, I think the right number is 60-40. DeAndre Swift, 60% of the running back touches and targets. Kyle Monangai, 40%. Now, obviously, game script can change a lot of that. If the Bears get up early, you might see Kyle Monangai really out there to grind the clock and really just help keep moving the chains over and over again. But I think 60-40 is the way that I want to see it go. And you can, again, let me know here in the chat on YouTube if you want more of a Nungai, if you want, directly 50-50, or, maybe flip it the other way. And maybe it's even more DeAndre Swift or more Kyle Monungai. But to me, 60-40 is about the right way to go, because it just feels like on paper that's the best balance. But what I do love about Ben Johnson is he might have thoughts like that in his head, but he's going to let the game dictate that for the Bears. That if Monungai is really having success and Swift is not, we're going to see him, give it to the hot hand, let that thing go. I mean, kind of similar to last week where, with Rome Odunze, they only ended up with 3 targets in the game, and, Zacchaeus with a ton of targets. I think that was another example of just let the hot hand fly, where maybe there's things more designed for Zacchaeus last week versus Rome. I think it'll be the same thing with the run game. Just whoever's performing at their best will touch the ball more. But going into the game, I would think 60-40 is the split. Now, the next one here, again, this surprised me. Cole Kmet, full participant in Thursday's practice, coming off being in the concussion protocol. It's a weird thing in the NFL where some of these guys, they go through it quickly and some of them take a lot of time. And Cole got banged up on that one. And, we didn't see the fencing, which is, the thing that Tua did a couple years ago. He got out of the field, but it's good to see him back for multiple reasons. One, he's still a good blocker. And Cole Kmet has frustrated me this year at times with the false starts as a veteran, and Loveland's had them too, but I expect more from Cole Kmet at this point in his career than having those. But I still want to see more Cole Kmet in the offense. And this one, though, I do feel a different way than I feel about the running back room. I hope last week, while I'm excited from a young guy, I really want to see more Colston Loveland actively involved in this offense, making it a point to get him the ball. Just seeing the way that he caught that first touchdown against the Bengals, the safety delivers a hard hit against him there. He doesn't flinch. And obviously the game-winning touchdown where he breaks a tackle, runs all the way for that 58-yard touchdown for him and Caleb Williams. I want more Colston Loveland this weekend. Of all the things we can see from the Bears, I think that's the number one thing that I want to see them expand on this week. Get the ball to Rome Odunze, who we'll talk about, and his dad. But get Colston Loveland ball. Like, he can be a real weapon for this team. So find a way to get him the ball and be creative in doing it, whatever that looks like. But just more Loveland for me. And the other one is Luther Burden. Now, this one's going to be interesting because we've seen Luther Burden. We've all seen it, the ups and downs of his role in the offense and the special teams games, what his role is going to look like this weekend. The first thing I thought when Luther Burden, full participant, I want to see a change on kick return. Find a way to get Luther Burden the ball on kick return going forward. Devin Duvernay, to me, has just looked slow. He's not putting the Bears in good field position like we're seeing the other teams do against the Bears special teams unit when they're receiving the ball. Obviously, you have to have 2 guys back there, and Duvernay is fine as one of them, but I want to see Luther Burden. That's the first step this weekend, is get him back on kick return, make him a weapon back there, just that elusiveness, the speed that we've seen from him. Now that he's active again this weekend, I really hope we see him back in that role. In terms of Luther Burden's role in the offense this weekend, I would expect it to be a little limited. I think going back again to training camp and, not being lined up correctly and having to be taken off the field, we haven't seen him be a huge factor into this offense. We've seen the big plays, but like the flea flicker play we saw earlier this year, but just the every down playing we haven't seen. And I don't expect that to change this weekend. I would like to see, of course, one big shot to him, make sure that when he's on the field that he is a threat to the Giants secondary. But of the guys returning and getting healthy, between Swift, Kmet, and Burden, I frankly just expect the least amount of, snaps and targets and all those things and touches to be for Luther Burden. So that's why I want to see him more actively involved coming up in the kicking game this weekend. But they're looking healthy, and that's good because it's been, mostly a healthy season on offense, but you have these guys just kind of dropping like flies a little bit. DJ Moore has been battling through injury this entire season. It feels like in every game, feels like he's getting up and he's moving slow, but he continues to battle out there and block great and catch the ball when he gets thrown to him for the most part. So I'm just excited to see the full arsenal again this weekend for Ben Johnson and just what that means for the Chicago Bears against the New York Giants in a game in which I think they're going to win pretty handily at this point. All right, when we get back, let's talk about let's take a break. When we get back, Ben Johnson, some praise for Caleb Williams that really excited me, made me excited, because a lot of times I feel like when you hear a coach speak at a podium, it doesn't mean a lot. I think Ben Johnson has changed that pretty quickly for us in Chicago, where you can really understand that he's very straightforward. So we'll talk about that. We'll talk about Rome Odunze's dad and kind of, ending that saga really before it begins. We'll get to that next year on Locked On Bears. Today's show is also brought to you by PrizePicks. You and I make decisions every day, but on PrizePicks, being right can get you paid. Don't miss any of the excitement of this sports season, whether you're following the NFL, NBA, or both. There's no better time to jump in on the action. If you haven't tried it yet, PrizePicks is the simplest way to play. Just pick more or less on at least 2 player stats, and if you get them right, you win. It takes less than 60 seconds to make your lineup, and you can play anywhere PrizePicks operates, including California, Texas, and Georgia. I love this new feature. The new stacks feature, it's a total game changer. You can now pick more on Steph Curry's points, threes, and assists in the same lineup. I always wanted that, and they finally added it. I'm so excited to have it on PrizePicks. Plus, if one of your players leaves early with an injury, the injury reboot saves your lineup from a loss. Download the PrizePicks app today and use code LOCKEDONNFL to get $50 in lineups after your first $5 lineup. That's code LOCKEDONNFL for $50 in lineups after your first $5 lineup. PrizePicks, it's good to be right. All right, final segment here. Let's talk a little bit about Caleb Williams and some comments made by Ben Johnson that to me were really exciting. And then Rome Odunze kind of, shutting everything down for what his dad was tweeting. So Caleb Williams this year, I think, has been really improving. We named him most improved player at the start of the show, Joe. But I really enjoyed what we've seen from him. But what I've really appreciated from Ben Johnson this year has been his honesty. From the very beginning of the season into training camp about when things aren't going well, when things are going right, being hard on his players publicly in the media. And like, not all coaches can get away with that. When they were earlier in the season, we talked about their practice habits, and then we saw the follow-up to that and getting a win right away after he challenged them. That to me has all been really positive. So when Ben Johnson says things that are really good, it does stand out to me, because not to say he's a negative coach, but I think he's just an honest evaluator of what he sees. So Ben Johnson was asked about one of the throws to Britton Brown that Caleb Williams made this last weekend. It was a high throw. It wasn't a good throw. We acknowledge that. But what he said after that was that even though they didn't haul it in, Ben Johnson said, quote, "But that to me was what we want this quarterback to look like, as he's playing with the timing and rhythm of this offense and trusting his feet to take him through the progressions. It's something for us to build on." And then Ben Johnson followed that up with saying, "I think he's starting to play faster. It's looking more like I want it to look, more the way he, Caleb Williams, wants it to look." That to me is such a positive thing, because he hasn't really acknowledged that. He talked, again, the other side about how Caleb needs to be more accurate and how it might be challenging for him to develop his accuracy, because not everyone's got it, when they get to the league. But to hear him, fully acknowledge that Caleb's starting to figure it out and look more like the quarterback that he wants him to be, it just got me excited to think that, okay, we're moving in the right direction. Caleb Williams is, I'm not sure if right now he's on pace for 4,000 yards. He's pretty close, if he's not, right above it. That feels like that's in reach this year, and it does feel like it's an arbitrary number that shouldn't really matter. But I know for us Bears fans, like it does. It's hard to be the only team in the NFL with never having a 4,000-yard passer in a single season. So I do hope he checks the box, just so I never have to hear it again, frankly. But it's always just kind of a little rewarding, I think, when you just hear your coach talk, positively about your quarterback like that. So that just got me excited to hear those quotes and to read them, in an article from The Athletic about how Ben Johnson is viewing Caleb Williams' progression, and that the progress is there. And look, I'm not a coach. I'm a fan. I'm a podcaster. I'm a radio host. But I see it too. Like I see the growth from Caleb Williams, and I think a lot of us see what we're seeing on a daily basis or a weekly basis right now. It getting just a little bit better in certain areas. And what excites me the most about what Ben Johnson said and also some of the struggles of Caleb Williams is the struggles have been different every week. And it just also shows that I don't think Caleb Williams is really particularly close to being a finished product right now in the NFL, which why should he be? He's a young quarterback in the NFL. And I know Drake May is doing what he's doing, but we got to take a deep breath sometimes, I think, on that. Last thing we'll hit on here before we wrap up today. Rome Odunze's dad, James Odunze, there was a tweet that went out that said, trade Rome Odunze to a team that's going to throw him the ball. And he put the pin emoji on it. We talked about it a couple times this week on the squad show, mentioned it on Wednesday as well. We had yet to hear, it be addressed. We actually saw, from what I saw, Ben Johnson looked like he was being asked a question about it. And then a microphone seemed to be mysteriously turned off. Like it's kind of felt like maybe there was a don't ask, please. I'm not going to answer this without saying please. The media tried to ignore it, but Ben Johnson didn't answer that question. But in open locker room on Thursday, Rome Odunze was asked about it. And this is what he said. He said, quote, "I don't make a big deal of it. Obviously, he has his opinions, his dad. I have mine, and I feel like he needs to voice those things. And he feels like he needs to voice those things on social media. That's his prerogative, but he speaks for himself. I speak for myself. At the end of the day, he's a Rome fan. He's in full support of Rome Odunze. So that's first and foremost for him. But I love my pops." Look, it's one of those that was it necessary for Rome to answer this question? Probably not. It feels like it's more of a media story. I mean, the last I checked, the tweet does have 11 million views. So like it's gone pretty viral as much as you pretty much can. He's tweeting stuff about Marvin Harrison Sr. speaking up earlier in the day. But Rome had to just come out and just do this. I like how the Bears handle it. They tweet out a video. I think it's selfless, and it was a bunch of like Rome Odunze not catching the ball plays. So they're kind of poking fun at it themselves, and Rome handled it well. And you can't speak for your parents. It's not an easy thing to do, and it's not like he's really shown anything. I mean, body language isn't the end all be all, but I've never seen anything during games that indicates, diva wide receiver behavior from Rome Odunze like we see from a lot of the best wide receivers in the NFL. He always seems pretty cool, calm, and collected. Even when Caleb Williams is, throwing some bad passes over the last year and a half, he never seems to get overly frustrated in the moment. So put a pin in it. It's over. No more drama. Unnecessary. James, please don't do it again. I don't really like talking about this stuff, but I'm glad Rome Odunze at least addressed it, got it out of the way. And hopefully this week, though, to James' point, I hope Rome Odunze is much more actively involved in the offense last week. 3 targets, 3 targets last week, I think it was. Not enough for him. And, maybe make them all from Caleb Williams instead of Cole Kmet, even though it was a good throw from Cole Kmet. All right, that will do it on YouTube, plus wherever you find your podcast on Apple and Spotify. You can find me on all social media platforms at Joe George Radio. You can check myself and Adam Sager out on Sunday. We'll be live right here on the Locked On Bears YouTube channel as soon as the game ends versus the Giants. And I'll be back with you guys filling in for Lauren again on Monday and Tuesday before he returns from vacation. Thank you for making Locked On Bears your first listen of the day. The NFL season is here, so for your second listen of the day, get a double dose of the Locked On NFL podcast. Tyler the Madman Rowland gives you a shot of espresso to start your football day, while Tony Wiggins takes you to the barbershop for the smoothest break to listen to podcasts. Again, thank you all for listening. Appreciate you hanging out with us. So I know it's weird when Phil and host jump in, so thanks for hanging out with us today here on Locked On Bears. We'll talk to you on Sunday and then on Monday and Tuesday. Have a good one.